I can go down to the corner drugstore and pick up a pocketbook on perversion and actually distort my own thinking for 2 weeks. You say, will the thoughts that I read in this book come back for a period of 2 weeks? Yes, they will. I will begin to wonder, why are they like that? Why did they do that? And will my subconscious wrestle with this perversion, trying to resolve it with what I believe to be normal? And will I suffer? Now, can I choose what course of action I'm going to follow? So we say then that I should only read positive things. The next one, only watch positive things. And let's talk about television for a minute. I've got to be very careful because one night I really come down the line on television, and a gentleman that was in the seminar went home and sold his television set the next day. And I did not mean that at all. I firmly believe in television because it gives tremendous breadth to our children. It's possible for a child now to have more breadth at age 8 than at any other time in history. So I think it's a good thing to have. But I also believe that you should be able to control it. Now, how do you control a TV set? Well, you have nerve enough to turn it off as soon as you find out it's bad. Now, what do you do to this powerful fact of curiosity? Some people, when they've watched up to probably 1/4 of a TV program, irregardless whether it's bad or good, what do they have to do? Well, we got to find out even if we're going to die. I mean, no matter what the damage is, let's stay with it. Now, what you've got to do is learn to love yourself to the point where you will not watch anything negative. Now, how well can you do this? Is it a question of whether you know or whether you don't know? The answer is very simple. When my little boy was 5, he had finally arrived at where he thought he was growing up. And one of the status symbols in our home at that time was being able to use a remote control. So he convinced me that he was old enough to use the remote control, so I let him have it. Now, very seldom do I ever get to watch TV. I'm normally traveling and I'm very seldom at home. This particular evening I was there and I was getting ready to enjoy a program. And what do you suppose he does? Turns the channel on me. Immediately I said, I knew you were too young. So I went over and I got the remote control away from him and I put it back on the channel and got ready to enjoy it. He said, Daddy, this is a bad program. I said, well, we'll decide that when it comes on. I mean, it hadn't come on yet, just the music. He says, didn't you hear the music? Oh, I said, yes, I heard the music, but I'm getting ready to find out if it's good or bad. He says, it's bad music. I turned, I looked at him and I says, what do you mean? Well, he says, you told me that when they used the knife or the gun, it was bad. I said, that's right. He said, well, I found out that before they ever get to the guns and the knives, they talk certain ways. I thought, well, that's all right for him to know that. But he says, and then I discovered that before they talk certain ways, they play the certain kind of music. And he says, that's the kind of music they play. Now, this is a 5-year-old teaching me. I believe you can learn from anybody. I didn't believe him. I kept the TV on. Sure enough, it was bad. Now, since then, I have found out that when it's comedy, when it's musical, when it's light, what kind of music? The light kind of music. When they start playing them drone kind of music, even though it's going to be good, it will be bad. So since then, we've been able to tell by the music whether it's good or whether it's bad. Now, even if they don't use knives and guns, if you get a real harassed, nervous, tight drama with a lot of sharp talk, does that help you? That grates on your nervous system. That's hard on you. In other words, you want something that uplifts and edifies and builds you rather than something that destroys you. Oh, by the way, before I go on, let me tell you, my little boy was not confused with, there was only 2 things on television that would confuse him. Number 1 was Batman. He got mixed up and thought that was a cartoon. And the second thing that would confuse him are cartoons. He has a hard time knowing whether it's a bad cartoon. I'll tell you how I first discovered how bad they were. My little boy was screaming. I went in there and I got a hold of him and I shook him and I finally got him to where he knew who I was. And you know what the whole problem was over? A simple robot. It was going to get him. If you want to know how bad TV is for children, read some of the articles J. Edgar Hoover has published. Probably of all the people in the United States who are against TV for children, he is the leading force in our country. His stories are blood-curdling. I mean, he can actually tell you of robberies that boys have carried out that were identical to robberies on TV. The classic story that he tells is a little tiny boy who tied his father up. And the knots that he had seen used on TV. After his father was tied to where he couldn't move, he took a knife and killed him. After he killed his father, he wanted his father to come back to life. I mean, he untied him and said, "It's my turn." Does that show you how far a child can be from reality? He had no idea that there was such a thing as death. So I think what you've got to do as far as TV is concerned with children is two things. Number one, supervise the TV very closely. And number two, balance everything they see on TV by your own personal time with them. I would balance the time by teaching them a sense of values, by teaching them what is right and wrong, by teaching them what is real and what is not real. And I would do it in the same proportion as the number of hours they spend on TV. Then they have the advantage of the breadth of the TV, which is tremendous, with the discernment to know how to use it. There's another disadvantage to TV, too. After you've spent the evening, you get a feeling that you've wasted it. And this sort of is aggravating when life is very precious. The eye gate is the most important gate of all. You know why? On the eye gate, I don't have any censorship. Whatever I see goes straight to the subconscious. With the ear gate, I have a wonderful opportunity because do I get to translate it myself? Then do I get to choose the image I'm going to make the word into? But on television, I don't have a chance. All right? Next is listen only to positive things, even if you have to walk away from a conversation. What we're saying then on this actual area of the fence, never let anything come inside the fence that would be negative. Only have a positive environment. This would be your work situation, your home situation, and your social situation. I've terminated more people in the past 4 years because of this concept. There's just no reason to have them around. Just like that. Make a quick and accurate decision. You're through. And by the way, when I terminate them, how much pay do they get? 2 weeks in advance. Do I want them around to earn it? Well, on your way. Spend your money elsewhere. Because remember, I'm carrying my own subconscious around, and I've got to be careful. I've got to make sure that I don't damage it, nor do I want to fill it up with junk. Now, if I follow this procedure, will this fence keep most everything negative outside? Therefore, will I have sort of a clean atmosphere inside the fence for the subconscious to live a little more relaxed? Now, still something will come right through your fence, right into your subconscious. You'll still have to use block and you'll still have to use repetition. But you eliminate tremendous. Now, I have been with negative people where I start blocking, and I start repetition, and I manage all the time I'm with them to survive. In other words, I do not become negative. But have I done one thing creative while I've been with them? And have I used up all my energy to remain positive? So we say that I have survived, I've tread water, I've kept my head above, but I haven't done anything to any real productive advantage. And it's interesting, too, that the next day I have to do what? Something negative comes into my head that they said. And I've already gotten rid of it once, but here it comes back again. The other day this happened to me. I was driving along in the car and the radio was on. It was one of these interviewing programs. A lady came on. Really, I think she's crazy. But she was saying so many radical things that curiosity got the best of me and I couldn't help but want to hear what else could she say. So before I knew it, I had listened for about 5 minutes to her. I think the announcer must have been in the same predicament that I was in because she talked way longer than anyone else talked on his program. But she was against everything, the government right down to the little kids on her street. Now, I knew it was ridiculous. I knew it wasn't true. I only listened to it because I was curious. And finally, in exasperation, I turned it to another station. But 3 days later, ideas from what she had said were still coming up in my head. Was her conversation wasting more than 5 minutes of my life? What I should have done was turn the station the minute I heard the first bit of nonsense. Curiosity has done a lot of damage to me. When that expression, curiosity killed the cat, I think there's some truth to it. Sometimes I think when it comes to negativism, you should kill the curiosity. There's no need to be curious for negativism. By the way, if you are curious of negativism and you do go ahead and explore, you always come up with what kind of a feeling? Empty and hollow. All right, the next thing we want to do very quickly, we've got a 20-acre field. We've cleaned it completely with repetition. The ground's all prepared. Now we want to plant something. Let's look in our manual at our thoughts that are expressed in words. And let's go through them. I'd like for you to take a blank sheet of paper and write down on the paper the one that you would like if I could give it to you on a gold platter. In other words, if I had the actual power tonight to actually give to you one of these words, which one would you choose? Which one would you desire more than any other one? What we're doing tonight is ordering seed for you. We're not going to plant wheat after all. We've got some real seed here that we're going to plant. Now, after you have chosen the one that you would like more than any other, wad the paper up tight. Now, when you wad it up tight, if you're a gentleman, put it in your pocket. And every time you change trousers, move it to the new trousers, put it on the dresser. When you reach in the pocket for parking money, feel it. I know one man that carried it around in his pocket for 2 months, and by the way, they never wear out. They get dirty, but they don't wear out. And I would think that within a week you should become curious of what the word means. And when you become curious, I think you should go to the dictionary and look it up. You see, you're going to live with this word, is what you're going to do. Now, as soon as you feel it is a part of you, go back to the list and get another one. And keep doing that until you've done it with 9 words. Now, somewhere between 7 and 10 words, something magic's going to happen to you. I'll diagram it for you in the form of a wheel. There will be a hub in the middle, and I will have spokes. Now, the reason you're not operating too well as a personality is because how can a wheel turn if some spokes extend beyond the rim? We say, at best, you have a bumpy ride, don't you? You don't have a charming personality when you have a bumpy ride. Now, normally, the one you're going to select tonight will be the one with the longest spoke. And as you master that one, you will take off the edge and you will say that's yours, and you will come into the hub. Go back and take the next longest one. Now, what happens after 9 of them? You have a wheel, don't you? And will the wheel turn? Now, something interesting will happen. Did you know that all of these spokes will come in and the hub will actually be the same as all the spokes? One of the words in your list tonight is the hub. I won't tell you what the hub is. I'll let you find out. But it's an interesting experience because sometimes you'll have a spoke sticking out like this, and when you master one word, you'll find out that it's just in a continuation of those same spoke, and you'll pick up another word, and you'll find out that's still the same spoke, and you'll finally get into the actual hub. Now, how would you feel if you had all of these words as part of your self-image? Do you think you could fall in love with yourself? If I planted some corn tonight, it would take 92 days before I could eat it. Would you like to tell me how many days it will take if I plant it tomorrow? 93. In other words, the fastest that I can get corn is 92 days if I plant tonight. And this will actually solve the problem of when do you start. tonight. Start right now. In other words, begin to plant and to fill your plot of soil with so many good seeds that people will come by looking at you. They'll be able to see a single fear, a single inferiority complex, a single doubt. No, they'll look at that field and they say, I have never seen such a field of wheat. Golden, the way it waves in the wind. What a beautiful personality. And will they fall in love with you? Now, it's an interesting thing. If you can get everybody in the world to fall in love with you, will you have any more money problems? Will you have any more of any kind of problems? Someone showed me a poll today of the American population, and it was a list of things that you would do if they would give you $1 million. A lot of nonsense things like take off your clothes in public and give up your citizenship. As I was going down this list, one of the things was to give up all of my friends permanently. Do you realize that in the poll they took in the United States that 12% of the American population agreed that they would give up all of their friends permanently for $1 million? I come to a real quick conclusion. They didn't have any. There was 12% of the population couldn't have any friends, because if they really had friends, they wouldn't give them up. Oh, that's an interesting article, and I think it's in one of the magazines that's just come off the press this week. It's the article, the title of the article is The American Public's Opinion Toward Money. Why do people have no friends? Could it be that they do not know how to love? Could it be that they are not able or capable of actually giving the 7 A's, which we're going to cover in another lesson? Let's look tonight at why people cannot love. And we will find the basic reason is fear. Therefore, we want to say that all fear is bad because fear takes away our ability to love. Now, I know right away the first thought that comes into your mind, surely fear is good. Or at least isn't some fear good? And I think in order to clarify this, we should actually define the difference between respect and fear. Here I have a hot plate in a normal kitchen, and I walk in, and not seeing that the hot plate is on, I put my hand down and I'm burned, and I jump off and I realize the hot plate burned me. The same day, a black cat walks into the room, and he's walking along the top of the stove, and he steps on the hot plate. And he lets out a horrible squeal and runs out of the kitchen. Now, we both had the same experience. The cat fears the hot plate. I don't. Now, the next day, I happen to walk into the kitchen, and I don't even notice the hot plate. My metabolism hasn't changed. My adrenaline glands haven't done anything. My blood's not changed in texture. I walk right up, and I have to reach for something, and I put my hand right beside the hot plate, and I don't even think about it. But I don't touch it because I have respect for it. The cat comes walking along, and he sticks his head around the kitchen door, and he takes one look, and all he can see in the whole room is the hot plate. Every hair on his back goes straight up. He screams and turns and runs as hard as he can run for a half a mile. Now, we say the cat has fear of the hot plate, and I have respect for the hot plate. Now, do I have any kind of emotional reaction to that hot plate? None whatsoever. Will that damage my heart to spend the rest of my life beside the hot plate? Now, what would happen to that cat if we brought him in here and tied him beside the hot plate? Would he kill himself? The fear would actually kill him. Now, does that show the difference between respect and fear? Now, in order to truly get rid of fear, do you have to hate it? If tonight you can some way rationalize fear is good in any way, shape, or form, you'll tolerate fear in your system the rest of your life. But if I can show you tonight that fear is bad, will you get rid of it completely? Some time ago, I was trying to find a good man to actually live in my guest cabin and help my hired man with the ranch work. I found a man that had actually been in the chicken business since 1939. After I had shown him over the whole ranch and described his duties and was thoroughly convinced that he was the man that I would like to hire, I took him around the lake over to the guest cabin. After I had shown him the cabin, the 2 bedrooms, I decided that the most ideal place on the entire ranch to finally sell him on this particular job was to sit on the front porch. It's high above the lake, and it enjoys a whole panoramic view of the entire ranch. As we were sitting there, I asked him to look at the lake. And then I noticed he hadn't looked at the lake. He wasn't looking at the lake. And that was going to be the selling point. So I said, why? Why aren't you looking at the lake? He said, I can't stand it. And I said, it's beautiful. He said, a lake similar to this lake was where I lost my twin brother. Now this man had a fear of water and of a particular lake that actually resembled a lake that he had had a prior experience with. We say then that fear took away his enjoyment of the lake. Now let's contrast this with my actual feelings of respect for this lake. I respect this lake so much, since it's 25 feet deep, that I will not swim alone. In other words, I always want somebody there who could actually save me if I did happen to have a cramp. Now let's look at the lake just a little further. Let's assume that I had respect for the lake, but let's assume that I had a fear because one of my children would drown. Could I then enjoy the lake? The answer is no. To have the fullest enjoyment of anything on this earth, you have to absolutely eliminate all fear toward that object. When we go into the affectional field diagram, we will be able to demonstrate this clearly. But right here tonight, we've got to realize more than ever that to truly love, there cannot be any fear at all. Now, there's only one time that I can see that fear is good. Fear acts as a schoolmaster. If there were some teenage boys tonight breaking windows out of some department stores, wouldn't a little fear of the police help? Now, which would be worse? Breaking the windows or the fear of the police? Breaking the windows. Therefore, is it better to fear the police than break the windows? All right, if I was a man living without any respect for God whatsoever, would it not be better for me to have fear of God? All right, then we say fear of God is better than living a life without respect for authority in any way, shape, or form. Now, because I have given you 2 illustrations where fear is better, does that make fear good? No. By the way, the scriptures tell us the beginning of wisdom is what? Fear of the Lord. So I'm not trying to tell you that you shouldn't fear God. I'm just telling you that fear is the initial school teacher that teaches you who God is. Now, once I know who God is and I fall in love with Him, do I need any fear? The Protestants have this in a beautiful song that they sing called Amazing Grace. And I doubt if very few of them know what the words mean. Let me quote you one line. Grace hath taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. Now, if you watch that line, the author of that song knew what I'm trying to teach you tonight. He knew that what do you have to have in the very beginning? A real fear of God. But as soon as you have a fear of God, what are you supposed to do with it? Get rid of it. In other words, there's no need to continue having a fear of God. Now, my boys happen to have a fear of being spanked. Is that necessary? Yes, this is a part of life. If I wanted to wait for them to learn respect the normal way, I might be dead first. Do we have to have a shortcut to learn quickly? All right, never underestimate the value of fear as an initial school teacher. But always remember, while it's doing its initial work, it's destroying your physical body. Because while I'm in a state of fear, just like that cat, are my adrenaline glands working overtime. By the way, even if you have a fear of God, your adrenaline glands are working overtime. Is your blood kind of thick and strangling? And it's a little hard for your heart to pump this kind of blood through your veins. Now, we could get a book from a medical doctor that would tell you all the things that happen to you physiologically when you're afraid. And probably if you would read this book, you'd be so scared you couldn't fear again. Fear, then, even though it's a school teacher, I think we should realize it is destroying us while it is a school teacher, but the destruction we're receiving physically, is that not better than what would happen to us if we weren't learning? Yes. So therefore, is fear acceptable as an initial school teacher? Yes. But how fast should you learn? Just as fast as you possibly can. And what always replaces fear? Love. In other words, tonight you shouldn't have one speck of fear of God in your entire being. Perfect love casteth out all fear. This is exactly the way you should live. Now, is there any such thing as good fear in a matured individual? I'll let you think for a moment. In other words, if I've gone past the stage of breaking the windows out of stores, and if I've learned to respect authority, and if I've had all my elementary lessons fully accomplished, then can I live a life without fear? Yes, I can. And you had better if you're going to live a long time. In other words, this is impossible to live a long time with fear. So then we say that fear is good. If I'm learning, but after I learn, fear cannot be tolerated for one moment in my being. Now, how do you get rid of fear? You use the principles that we've learned tonight in repetition. Now, I have known people who have actually conquered fear with repetition, and it would almost, so to speak, that if you went home tonight and found your house full of snakes, about 2 feet deep all over the floor. Is that the condition of some people's subconscious? If you have nightmares, is that not the state of affairs in your subconscious? All right, now what should you do? Go to work with a club. Let's say you kill them all. Except in the closet, it's a little baby one. Well, this one in the closet's your pet. Did you know people have pet fears? They have little fears they indulge in for good pleasure. I've worked with people in counseling, and we've really gotten rid of all the fears that irritated them and aggravated them. And I tell them, well, let's get rid of this last little one. They say, no. Well, keep that one. Now, if you keep a little baby one, it's not long until he becomes a big one. And will he have the house 2 feet deep again? I actually had a counseling situation where they got 2 feet deep again. They come back, and we went through the whole thing, got rid of them all again except the baby one again. You would think the second time around would they learn to get rid of them all. Now, we have a beautiful illustration of this concept in the Old Testament. When the Israelites went into Canaan, they were to do what with all Canaanites? Every one. Now, compare that with fear. What did they do? They had a little pet, didn't they? Now, would you like to go back in the Old Testament and read all the trouble that the pet caused them?